Okay, so hopefully you guys can all see my screen. Just a quick introduction for those of you who I haven't talked to before. My name is Kevin Smith. I've been a travel agent with the Vacation Wizards for the past 5 years or so. And my motto is really, as a travel agent, vacations without the hassle. What I really try to do is to provide my clients with a service where I'm going to handle all the logistics for them, all of the paperwork, all of the behind the scenes stuff so that you guys can just enjoy your trip, have it be as hassle-free and enjoyable and relaxing as possible. Um, I book a lot of different things. I book Disney, Universal, river cruises, ocean cruises, all-inclusive resorts, international trips. But tonight we're going to be talking all about river cruises. And last summer, I had an opportunity to go on a river cruise myself. My wife and I went for our 25-year anniversary on a Rhine River cruise, and it was just the most spectacular vacation that we have ever taken. Um, we had so much fun. It was such an amazing trip, and I'm excited to share a little bit about that with you guys tonight. So, what is a river cruise? I think of a river cruise kind of as a combination of an escorted tour. So if you think of an escorted tour, that's where you have a charter bus that takes you around from city to city, and you stop in a town and stay in a hotel for a couple nights, and then you get on the bus and go to the next town, stay there for a couple nights. So that's an escorted tour. A river cruise is like taking an escorted tour and combining that with an ocean cruise. So it's kind of the best of both worlds. You've got the ability to go and see a lot of different places in a very short amount of time, but you've got the option with the like similar to the ocean cruise where your accommodations are moving with you, so you don't have to keep packing and unpacking your bags and constantly schlepping luggage all over the place. It's going to move with you, so you're really able to take advantage of both the benefits of both the river cruise, the ocean cruise, and the escorted tour kind of combined into that river cruise. So the first thing you'll kind of notice about a river cruise, unlike an ocean cruise, is the ship is much smaller than an ocean cruise. Where on an ocean cruise you may have 3,000 passengers on an ocean cruise, the river cruise is going to be somewhere more like 175 to 200 people on the cruise. So a much more intimate environment, um, and then you're going to have the ability to really mingle and get to know a lot of those other people that are on the cruise ship. You're going to have that really intimate environment. The other thing about a river cruise is that because you're on the river and it's so small that the river cruise ship can really get into the heart of the cities. A lot of these European locations are built where the city center is right on the river. So the boat docks right at the city center. You can get off the ship and you're right in the heart of all the action. Everything's right there. A couple nice things about the river cruise. You're not going to have the waves like you might have in an ocean cruise. So having seasickness is typically not an issue for people. You don't have that rocking motion and that sort of thing. And you can also see the shore at all times. So you're just running up the river. You can see both sides of the shore. So some people get a little bit uncomfortable being out in the middle of the ocean. That's one of the nice things about the river cruise. So I really kind of think of it as just like a small boutique hotel that's moving along from city to city. So there's several different cruise lines that provide river cruises. You've probably heard of Viking River Cruises. They do a lot of advertisements, so you've a lot of people are familiar with that. AMA Waterways, Avalon Waterways, Uniworld. They're all different types of cruise lines or different services of cruise lines, but they're all very similar in a lot of ways. The ships are very similar, the itineraries are very similar, and what's included, what you get in a river cruise is very common among the different cruise lines. Some of them may have subtle differences, like, for example, some of them are more catered towards families, some are more catered towards older adults. Some have themed cruises where you may have a food and wine cruise or different things like that. So, but overall, the different cruise lines are going to be very similar in a lot of ways when we talk about a river cruise. So let's get into some of the details. First of all, the ship. You can see a couple photos here of what the river cruise ship looks like. This is actually my picture down here on the bottom is the one that was from our ship that we went on last summer, and you'll notice it's about 3 levels high. So unlike those ocean cruises that may be 20 decks or 20 levels high, the river cruises are going to have about 3 levels. You're going to have the lower level down below where you've got cabins that are just kind of have just a small window, and then the upper 2 levels are going to have large panoramic windows in those suites where you can have a veranda or you can have a French balcony type of a room. The river cruise, they're not going to have a whole bunch of activities because the river cruise is really focused on the destinations. You're not going to see as much of the water slides and water parks and bumper cars and all these types of activities that you have on the large cruise ships. It's going to be small because you don't really spend a ton of time on the ship. A lot of your time when you're on the river cruise is off exploring the different ports and destinations where you're going. So you're going to have, like I said, about 75 cabins, 150 guests or so. You can have one main dining room. So everybody eats primarily in the main dining room. You're going to have usually a bar or lounge area where they will have happy hours. They'll have snacks and things throughout the day in that area. Typically, you'll have a small fitness center. You'll have maybe a whirlpool. Some of the ships do actually have a small swimming pool on the top deck. But usually that top deck of the ship is going to be an open air sky deck where you can lounge, you can read a book, you can watch the river you can watch the scenery as you float down the river. Really nice place to spend some time while the boat is actually sailing down the river. You're also going to have an observation lounge, a club lounge, which has more snacks. They have like a coffee machine in there where you can go in and you can have self-serve espresso, cappuccino, hot chocolate, tea, that sort of thing. They'll also have typically like water bottle refilling stations with different types of sparkling and flat waters, flavored waters, different things that you can use to fill up your water bottle before you go out and spend a day touring around the city. Each of the ships is going to have different onboard entertainment. We'll talk a little bit about that. They'll have in the lounge, they may have dancing, they may have karaoke, they may bring in entertainment from the local area, which is really cool when they bring in, when I was on the Rhine River cruise last summer, they brought in a band. There was one of the local bands and they came on and played music in the lounge, which was really fun. So there's a lot of cool stuff that goes on there. And then they'll also have an adventure center typically. So a lot of the ships, they have bicycles on board the ship that they carry with them from port to port. So when you get off the ship, you have your free time, you want to do something, you can actually grab one of the bicycles and go off and explore on your own using one of their bicycles. And then typically the ships will have an elevator as well. So if you're not good with stairs or if you have some mobility issues, then that elevator can be really good as well. So here's just a few pictures of what the ship looks like. You've got your dining room over here. The dining room is going to be like an open seating. So there's typically not going to be assigned seating. When you go to dinner, there's going to be a variety of tables, 2 tops, 4 tops, 6 tops, different sizes of tables. And you can choose when you go to dinner if you want to just sit with one person, sit with the person that you came with, or you can sit with a group of people. If you make friends at happy hour or something like that, you guys can all go to dinner together and sit at a larger table, but it's totally open seating within the dining room. Down here, you can see this is the observation lounge. So a nice place to just relax, have a glass of wine as you're floating down the river. Here, the bar area. Down at the bottom, this picture is the club lounge. So this is where they have the coffee machine and the water bottle refiller and snacks and cookies and pastries and things like that throughout the day. And then the sky deck where you can lounge and relax during the time that you're sailing as well. Okay, the staterooms. So like I said, a lot of the staterooms have a large panoramic windows. They have a balcony or a veranda or a French balcony. You can see in this picture here, this is our stateroom where On Avalon ships, they have this amazing wall of windows here as you look out, and it's bigger than like your typical glass door, your sliding door that just opens one section. Like actually, all three sections open up, and you can push the window all the way back, and so that it's just an open air balcony. And this was awesome. We loved to just sit here in the mornings as we were sailing, drink coffee, watch the scenery go by outside, and really just a nice place to relax. And then you've got these rooms were really surprisingly spacious. I was surprised to see how much room was in there. This is a king size bed, or it's actually two twins pushed together, and you can choose when you book your cruise if you want to have two twins separately or if you want to have them pushed together. But this was one of the most comfortable beds that I've ever slept in. I had the most amazing sleep as we were laying in this comfortable bed, floating down the river. The gentle motion of the boat going down the river and the motor kind of just slightly giving you a little bit of a vibration. It was just amazing, amazing sleep. But then they have your ensuite bathroom, and I also expected these to be really tiny. A little shower, and I was surprised that the shower head was actually above my head, which normally on a cruise ship, I'm having to bend down to get my head underneath the water. But a full-size shower, really strong water pressure, just really, really comfortable suites here. Um, and then you're going to have a little sitting area where you can lounge. You've got these chairs. You've got a little couch area there. It's going to have a mini fridge, complimentary bottled water, which is really nice because every time that you go out of the room, they're constantly coming in, making sure that your mini fridge is stocked, making sure that your bottled water is full, and that everything is refreshed in your room. Then they're going to have complimentary bathrobes there for you as well in the stateroom. So, um, we didn't spend a ton of time in the stateroom, but it was a really nice place to be in the evening after dinner, maybe while you were sailing, and you just open up those windows and watch the scenery go by, or in the early morning drinking coffee. Really relaxing way to spend the day. Now to one of my favorite parts of the whole cruise, and that was the meals. Um, the meals on the river cruise are just out of this world. Everything is scratch made. You'll see every time they stop at port, they reload fresh ingredients on the ship. So you'll see the crew literally make kind of a chain and pass all the boxes and crates of fruits and vegetables and fish and steak on at each port. And they also bring on local wines and beers that are specific to that region or specific to that area where you are at that specific port. So everything is scratch made. They have local specialties. So if you are in Germany, and they may have some local cuisine that's specific to that port, they're going to serve that at dinner as one of the choices. Now, if you are a little bit skeptical, or if you're a little bit picky about your meals, they're always going to have options like steak and chicken as well. So that if you don't like the local specialties that they're offering, they've got something that's going to suit everybody there. And it's also all you can eat. So what I actually did a lot of the times was they would offer a fish dish, and I would have them add the steak on the side and kind of make my own surf and turf. And nobody blinked twice about that. They thought that was great. And even if you ordered something and you didn't like it, you could order another dish and they would bring that, no issue whatsoever. As far as, sorry about that. As far as breakfast and lunch go, the breakfast is a buffet. And so you'll have that option in the dining room where you can go down there, and they'll have an omelet station. They'll have a full buffet with all sorts of, your standard breakfast items like eggs and bacon and sausage, but then they'll also have some local specialties there as well. And then some of the items you can also order off the menu at breakfast. So if you wanted Belgian waffles, or if you wanted eggs Benedict, there are things like that you can order off the menu as well. For lunch, it's also going to be a buffet. So they're going to have different items on the lunch buffet. And again, there's going to be things that you can order off the menu that are going to be there every single day. The menu is going to rotate pretty much every day. So when you're there for lunch, each day is going to be a little bit something different. but those items that are on the menu, like a hamburger or a chicken sandwich or a chicken Caesar salad, some things like that, some staples, they're always going to have available that you can order, even if they're not on the buffet. And then local beers and wines are included with lunch and dinner. So they do a really nice job, especially with the wine, of pairing the wines with the meal, with the different dishes that they're serving for that day, and bringing in local wines from the region where you are. So we were in the Alsace region of France, and we tried some of the most amazing local wines that they served at the dinner. And really, with each course that you had during the dinner, they had a different wine pairing that they would put together with that. I've actually got, I was going to bring up just to give you an example. This is a sample menu from one of the days that we were on our cruise, just to kind of give you an idea of what is included. So it's going to be a 3-course dinner. You've got your starters, where they've got some unique items, but then if you just want to order a salad, that's going to be there. That's going to be an option. You've got your soups. For the main courses, they're typically going to have a pasta dish, a fish dish, a meat dish, and a vegetarian dish. So they're really good about accommodating different dietary restrictions and different dietary needs. You can see some of the different amazing dishes that were available. And then, as you can see down here, chicken breast, grilled beef tenderloin, grilled salmon, those things are always available if you don't like one of the dishes that are offered that day. And then for the desserts, the best part of the meal, you typically we ordered one of each on the desserts because we were on vacation, right? Why not? But they also are going to have options like a cheese tray for dessert or a fruit tray, things like that too. So if you don't want a heavy dessert, there are other options for you. Just spectacular. The meals were really one of the highlights for us. We enjoyed the dinner each night that they had on the cruise. Um, it was it wasn't like a super formal thing, so you don't have to get dressed up in a suit. You don't have to wear formal wear. It's pretty casual, even though it's a gourmet meal, even though it's a 3-course meal, it's still very casual and it's not stuffy or uptight. So we really, really liked that. Oh, and one day they actually had a cookout up on the sun deck. So we were actually sailing one day. Typically, you're going to sail overnight, but one afternoon we were sailing down the river, moving from one location to the other. And so they did a cookout up on the upper deck in the sky deck for lunch. They had grilled out sandwiches, hamburgers, grilled chicken, stuff like that, and it was a really cool way to eat al fresco outside and experience that as you're going down the river. And then each day that we were on the ship, they had homemade ice cream for lunch as well. So 2 different varieties every single day, and there was a different flavor of ice cream every single day. So that was something we had to try just about every day as well when we were there. if you don't want to go and spend a couple hours in the dining room for the large gourmet meal, maybe you're tired from the touring the whole day, you just want to relax in your room, you can actually go to the lounge, and they will typically have a smaller sort of a buffet. It's the same foods that they have at the dining room, but it's in a buffet style. So you can just come and go as you please. You can help yourself. You can eat quickly, and then you can go back to your room if you want to retire early, or if you want to just relax back in your room. So you don't have to necessarily go through the longer dinner process. One of the things that just absolutely stood out about the cruise for us was just the service. The level of service in every category was top notch. The housekeeping, every time we left our room, they would come in, they would refresh the towels, they would wipe down the bathroom, they would, as I mentioned before, make sure that the water was stocked. Even if we just went down to breakfast, by the time we came back, the beds were made up. They would come in and they would open the curtains. They would turn down your blankets at night. Just meticulous service. It seemed like they had a buzzer on us or something. Somehow they knew exactly where we were at all times, because we never saw them in our room. Even when we came back early, they weren't in our room, but somehow they had been in there and gotten things refreshed and cleaned up. The food service, absolutely spectacular. I already said how delicious the food is, but the attention to detail of the serving wait staff and the servers. I mentioned it's open dining, so you're not necessarily always going to have the same server each night, depending on where you sit and how they configure it. But it's such a small ship and such a small intimate environment that over the course of a few days, the wait staff starts to get to know everybody on the ship. They start to learn your name. They start to learn your preferences. Do you like coffee? Do you like wine? Do you want soda? And they really have a meticulous level of service so that before you even ask for something, they're already bringing it to you. They know exactly what you want. And we just found that so amazing. Even the bartenders were just right there, friendly. They knew what you wanted before you even asked for it. Um, Absolutely amazing service. The cruise director is the person on the ship who's kind of responsible for all the tours and excursions and also setting up the nightly entertainment. And each night, what the cruise director will do is they'll get up and give a little presentation, and they'll tell you what's on the schedule for the next day, what the tour options are, and they'll go through and describe each of those tour options in great detail so that you can figure out exactly what you want to do. Really, kind of the hardest part, and I'm kind of skipping ahead, but the hardest part of the tours and excursions for us was deciding which ones to do, because a lot of times there's multiple options going on at the same time. And so we were struggling to choose. We want to do both of those things, right? So the tour director really helps to describe, tell you what the tours are all about, which ones are going to be fit for you. You can ask questions, and they're very open and accessible all the time on the cruise ship. The captain and crew were amazing. The captain was all over the ship, meeting and greeting the guests, very accessible. He even brought some of us up into the wheelhouse so that we could watch him drive the ship or sail the ship down the river for a while, which was really cool. And then I also mentioned the Avalon Go app here. I don't know if that counts as service, but I didn't know where else to put it in the presentation because it's really an amazing tool to help improve or enhance everything that goes on within the cruise. The Avalon Go app is going to have in there a daily newsletter. So every day when you go in and you open up the app at the beginning of the day, you're going to see the entire schedule for the day in that newsletter. And it's going to say, okay, we're docking at this time. These are the tours available. These are the dinner times. Everything's going to be right there in that newsletter so that you know exactly what's happening throughout the day. And then also in that app are going to be the daily menus for breakfast, lunch, and dinner, so you can kind of plan ahead, see what they're going to be having in the dining dining room for the day, and other information that you may need throughout your tour. So like at the port, there's going to be specific information about that port, things that you may want to see, maps for that particular port, or places of interest that you want to see. So really, really good tool to use to really just make the most of your time on the river cruise. So yeah, that leads me into the tours and excursions. This was really what it's all about, right? You're on this vacation to see the destinations, to see the ports. And one of the nice things about a river cruise is that the tours and excursions are typically included. You're going to get a daily excursion every single day, sometimes more than one, depending on how it's structured and how your schedule works out. And those tours are going to be small groups. All right. So you're not going to go in a group of 50 people trying to wander through the streets of Amsterdam. Excuse me. They're going to break you up into smaller groups, probably like 10 to 12 people at the maximum. Each of those little small groups is going to have their own tour guide who's a local expert, somebody who lives in that city and is from that city and knows everything about that city, from the history to the architecture to the politics, everything that you would want to know, those local experts are going to know. So they're going to match up each group with a local expert, and then they're going to send you on your excursion. Now, sometimes those excursions may be half a day. Sometimes you would have 2 half-day excursions in a day, where maybe in the morning you go tour the city, or tour the city center, or tour a museum, something like that. And then the afternoon, maybe you go on a wine tasting. But for each time, each slot where there are excursions, usually there's multiple options. So, like I said, you might want to go on a tour of the city. You might want to do a wine tasting. Sometimes there's active excursions like bike riding or hiking or kayaking. All of those things are going to be explained by the tour director each day and tell you what your options are so that you can plan out your day and you can know exactly what excursions you want to participate in. There's even some accommodations on the excursions for slow walkers or people that may have mobility issues. They'll create a separate group for those individuals so that they don't have to feel like they're bothering other people by slowing them down, and the other groups don't have to slow down. And it's going to accommodate everybody so that everybody can have a great time and a great experience on those excursions. But there's also going to be plenty of free time as well. So sometimes people think, oh, every minute of my trip is going to be planned out. I'm not going to have any time on my own. And really, realistically, is a ton of free time on these river cruises that are planned in the itinerary. Sometimes you're going to do a tour of the city, and then your tour guide is going to say, okay, now you have 2 hours to shop or to eat lunch or to do whatever you want, and then meet me back at a meeting point, and we'll go back to the ship. Sometimes it may be a whole afternoon where you do an excursion in the morning, and then in the afternoon you can just go off on your own and wander around the city, explore, see what you want to see, go shopping. Excuse me. We love to just sitting in a cafe on the side of the street, having a coffee or a beer and just watching the locals go by, which was a wonderful way to spend the free time. But there is plenty of that time available built into the schedule. There's nothing that you have to do. And while you're at the dock, while you're at the port, it's almost like the cruise ship becomes like a hotel. You can come and go as you please. You don't have to ask permission to get off the ship. You don't have to, as long as you're there when the ship is ready to leave, you can do whatever you want. So they give you a little card. You tap out when you're going to leave the ship so that they know that you're off the ship and they don't accidentally leave without you. When you come back on, you tap in and you can really do whatever you want with your free time. One thing about the tours that I really liked with the local experts is that the tour guides will wear a microphone and a headset, kind of similar to what I'm wearing right now. And then when you're on that tour, you're going to have a headset to listen to the tour guide. And that way, you don't have to necessarily be straining to hear them or walking right next to the tour guide to hear what they're saying. And so for me, what I like to do is I like to take a lot of pictures. So I kind of would lag back behind, take photos, try to wait until everybody was out of the way so that I could get a photo without people in it. But I could still hear what was going on with the tour guide. I could still hear all the information. And then I knew also, if they got a little too far ahead of me, I knew where they were so I could catch up to them as well. So that was really cool. And then also the devices that provide the headsets that you plug your headset into, they also have Wi-Fi built into them. So you're basically carrying around your own Wi-Fi hotspot provided by the tour operator. And you can connect your phone to that and actually use your phone without racking up international data charges. And that was a really nice thing because if you're out and about in a foreign country, there's a lot of times you want to use Google Maps to try to see where you're going, or you want to look up a local restaurant or something like that. And you can do that using that portable Wi-Fi device that they give you. So just a really nice touch, something I never would have thought of before going on the cruise, but really made the whole experience really that much better for us. So this is just a typical day on a river cruise. In the morning, usually there's going to be some sort of opportunity for exercise if you want to. You could go to the fitness center. A lot of times they'll have yoga classes or they may do a morning bike ride or things like that. Then there's going to be the breakfast buffet. And then you're going to typically disembark the ship for your excursions. So you'll choose your option that you want to do. And that may be just a half day excursion. It may be a full day, depending on where you are and what the options are for that particular port. If it's a half day excursion, then you'll come back to the ship for lunch. So lunch is going to be almost always served on the ship, regardless of what excursions are going on, and you're going to have that opportunity. Some people will skip lunch on the ship and just go and explore local restaurants. That's perfectly fine too, and that's an option for anybody that wants to do that. They're going to have afternoon tea typically, so little snacks, little sandwiches, and things like that. So if you come back from your afternoon excursion and you're starving, you can usually go in and get some cookies or get some finger sandwiches and things like that. And then they're going to have a happy hour before dinner. So the happy hour is going to be a time where you can relax, you can mingle with the other guests. We really enjoyed that part of the day because we got to know a lot of the other guests that were on the cruise ship, made a lot of good friends that we ended up going on excursions with and eating dinner with and things like that. And it's a great way to kind of bring everybody together. You know, after you're on the ship with such a small number of people for several days, you start to get to know people and start to, you see them all over the place. And so it makes it feel a little bit more homey and welcoming when you have that experience with them. At the end of the happy hour, that's usually when the cruise director is going to come in and give their port talk. So they're going to tell you everything that's going on the next day, give you any information that you're going to need or any news about the itinerary or any potential changes or things like that. And then it's going to be dinner, nightly entertainment, which really we enjoy the nightly entertainment when they brought on some of the local groups, some of the local bands playing local music. Really just another way to be immersed in the local culture, which was really fun for us. And then honestly, most people are kind of heading back to their rooms and going to bed early because it is a busy schedule and it is an early day the next day usually, but the lounge and the bar area does stay open probably until midnight or so. So for those that do want to hang out, that opportunity is there as well. So I went on the Rhine River. The Rhine River starts in Amsterdam, goes down through Germany and France, and ends up in around Switzerland. But there's a lot of other rivers that are very popular. These are four of the most popular rivers that we recommend for first-time cruisers, first-time river cruisers. The Rhine, the Danube, which I'll talk a little bit more in a minute, which kind of goes east-west through Eastern Europe. The Douro is in Portugal, and the Seine River is in France, and it starts in, the Seine River goes right through Paris. A lot of the cruises either start in Paris and will go north up into Normandy, or will go south from Paris down into the Burgundy region. So this is the Rhine River cruise. This is the one that I did, and we started here in Amsterdam, up in Holland, and this was a 7-day cruise. So it took us down through Germany. We stopped in Cologne. We stopped in Rudesheim. We went to Heidelberg Castle. And then as you get down into the south part of the river, it's pretty cool because the river actually separates Germany and France. So if you look on one side of the river, it's Germany. The other side of the river is France. And then finally, you end the cruise in Basel, Switzerland, which is very close to Zurich. Now, you always have the opportunity to add on a few days on either end of the cruise to stay on land. So in my case, we stayed in Amsterdam a couple nights before our cruise, so we just wanted to have a little bit of extra time to explore the city of Amsterdam. A lot of the people that were on our cruise, they went on from Switzerland and went down to Italy and spent several days at Lake Como in Italy. And that was actually part of the tour. The transportation was provided from the ship to Lake Como, and there was those tours and excursions continued for the land portion of their trip as well. The other popular river, kind of the top two, I would say, the Rhine and the Danube. So the Danube, as I mentioned, kind of goes east-west through Eastern Europe, starting in Germany, going through a lot of Austria, stops off in Vienna here, then a stop at Bratislava in Slovakia, and then finally ending up at the amazing Parliament in Budapest. One of the really cool things about going on a river cruise is the locks. I personally thought it was really neat. This is kind of an engineering marvel. If you don't know what a river lock is, basically you've got parts of the river that are different heights, right? You may have, originally maybe there was a waterfall. So you had a river that was higher up, and then there was a waterfall, and then a lower section of the river. And the locks are a way for them to raise and lower the ship between different sections of the river that are at different levels. So you pull into this lock, which is like kind of this concrete bathtub almost. They shut the gates at both the front and the back of the ship, and then they will pump it full of water. So it raises the ship up all the way up to the level of the river above it. And then they open the front gate and you just sail right out. Or sometimes if you're going the other direction, you sail into the lock and then they take all the water, pump the water out of the lock, and you lower the ship and then you sail out the other end. Really cool experience. Some of these pictures you can see, like we're inside the lock here and you can see the walls of the lock. And then down here in the lower right hand corner is once we've been lifted up to the level of the river, then the gate opens and we can sail right out. So really fun experience. This is me just actually touching the side of the wall. That's literally how close we were to the edge of the lock. But you can go out on the sky deck and you can watch the whole thing. So as you're out there and the ship is getting lowered and raised, you can watch it all from out on the observation deck or from the sky deck. So it's a really cool thing. Okay, so what's included in a river cruise? Your accommodations, of course. The ship is your floating hotel, so you're going to stay there, and you're only going to have unpack your stuff one time, and you can put it into the dressers and everything there, and then you're not going to have to worry about it for the rest of your trip. The meals, the beverages. So you've got, not only do you have local beers and wines at the meals, but you've got those water stations. You've got 24-hour coffee, tea, hot chocolate stations. All of that's going to be available to you. The shore excursions are included, as I mentioned. The entertainment, the onboard entertainment. Depending on the cruise line, some of them include gratuities in the cost of the cruise, but if they don't include it, you can prepay that so that it's done in advance and you don't have to worry about it while you're on your cruise. Transportation from the airport to the cruise ship and from the cruise ship back to the airport, and onboard Wi-Fi. So when you think about the cost of a river cruise, it's a little bit more expensive than an ocean cruise, but there's so many things that are included that if you were going to go on an ocean cruise, you kind of pay extra for that. You pay for the drink package, you pay for the shore excursions and the transportation, things like that. So when you look at an apples to apples comparison, it's very comparable price wise. So why choose a river cruise? This is kind of my opinion, but simplicity is one of the key factors. You've got everything planned out. You've got the itinerary. You don't have to worry about where am I going to stay? How am I going to get from point A to point B? How do I get tickets to go see this museum or to go to that site, that castle? How do we get in? How do we pay for it? Do we have to get different currencies and different locations and things like that? So it's just the simplicity of having everything planned out for you. Everything, you've got your cruise director there to explain everything to you for each day, and you can just relax and enjoy it. You can see a ton of stuff in a short amount of time. So in 7 days, you're going to see 7 different ports. Typically, the ship is going to be sailing overnight. So you're going to not waste time in transit from one city to the next because the ship is going to be moving while you are sleeping. And then the next day you wake up, you're in a new port, you go and explore that city, come back, get on the ship. Maybe while you are having dinner, the ship may start sailing, or sometimes maybe not even until late at night is it going to get sailing down the river. Unpack once, I mentioned an intimate experience. You don't have that crowds. You don't have 1,000 people all trying to get off the ship at one time. So just a more relaxed experience. Minimal chance of seasickness because you don't have the rocking of the sea. I get motion sickness really bad, and I had no issues on the river cruise. So it was really nice. I love the cultural immersion, just when you go into a city that you can be a part of that city. You're not, sometimes when you are on an ocean cruise and you get off at a port, it's very touristy because all these businesses have built up around the port to take advantage of the tourists. With the river cruise, it's not quite like that because you don't have the crowds of people getting off the river cruise. So you really are experiencing the authentic city. You're able to go to the shops, to the bakeries, to the restaurants, and really experience the culture and the authenticity of each location where you are. And then, of course, there's the beautiful scenic views. One of the highlights of the Rhine River cruise is that you sail down one day through what they call the Rhine River Gorge, and it's this section of the river where it's got giant hills on both sides of the river, and there's just castles dotting those hills all the way down for miles on the river, dozens and dozens of castles. So you sit out on the sky deck, you have a glass of wine, you watch the castles go by as the cruise director over the PA system will tell you the history of the different castles and who lived there and why, when it got built and all that information. And it's just really a spectacular experience. Um, I've got a few frequently asked questions, which I'm going to hit here first, and then after that, I'll open it up to see if there's any other questions that I didn't hit. But a few of the questions that get asked quite a bit: is a river cruise handicap accessible? I would say yes and no on that. The boat, the ship itself is pretty good. Like I said, they've got an elevator, they've got pretty wide doorways, typically, and things like that. But depending on where you're going, Europe in general is not very handicap accessible, especially a lot of the old cities where you've got cobblestone roads and you've got a lot of stairs and things like that. So if you are looking for something that's handicap accessible, be sure to talk to me or a travel agent to recommend something that's going to be a location and a destination that's going to be the most accessible as possible. How long does a river cruise typically last? That kind of depends. I would say the minimum is a week. The shortest cruises are about a week long. Sometimes you can find one that's 4 or 5 days, but about a week. If you're going to go that far, you want to spend at least a week on the river. And then some cruises will go 2 weeks plus. And if you add on a couple days on land tours on either side, you can get up to 15 to 20 days on a river cruise. But I would say on average about a week-long cruise with maybe a day or two on either end to explore on land. The best time for a river cruise kind of depends on where you're going and what location, but for Europe, definitely summer is a great time. Late spring is a good time for the Rhine. If you are going into Amsterdam, the tulips blossom in March and April, so it's a great time to go and see the tulips in Amsterdam before you get on your river cruise. And then there's also, they have Christmas cruises in Europe that you can go on in the wintertime, and they stop at all the different Christmas markets along the way. So when you stop at the port, a lot of these European towns and cities, they have huge Christmas markets where you can go and find a lot of locally handmade goods and a lot of really interesting things there. So they do have those. But from January to, say, April, usually not much cruising happening at that time of year. Is it good for kids, and what is the average age of people that take a river cruise? This is where I would say it kind of depends on the cruise line and the specific cruise that you're taking. In general, I would say the average age is probably around 45 to 50. But on our cruise, we saw people in their 30s, we saw people in their 70s and 80s. We saw a few families with teenagers, not young kids, but teenagers. And everybody was having a great time. It didn't matter what age they were. Everybody was having a great time. If you are looking for a river cruise with younger kids, Disney Adventures by Disney has a fantastic river cruise that is very specifically for families. So they have a lot of activities for younger kids, a lot of family activities to where maybe you can go if you're and do a cooking class together or do different activities like that. So there's something for everyone depending on what you're looking for. Will I be stuck in a large group on the tour? Like I said, most of the tours are going to be broken down into groups of 10 or 12. So rarely are you ever going to be on a large group. Free time, I talked about that already. Can I get on and off the ship anytime it is a port? Yes, pretty much. You can come and go as you please. Oh, what happens if the river levels are too high or too low? That's a common question because in the last couple of years, there's been quite a bit of publicity around the fact that the river level has been getting too low in the middle, like in August a couple times the last year and the year before, as a matter of fact. The Rhine got a little bit too low. They didn't have enough rain, and so there were points where it was not passable. It didn't cancel the cruise. It didn't really cause any issue. The only thing that happens there is that you do get to one point where as far as the ship can go on the river, and then you have to get out, get on a charter bus, and then they take you up the river as far as they need to until you can get back on another ship and then continue the rest of your cruise. So that does happen occasionally. It's pretty rare, and in the past couple of years, it's been pretty much just happening in August. But before that, the year before that, there was no issues with water level. So you just never really know exactly what's going to happen. How will I know what excursions are available? Well, you've got all that information in the app, but you're also going to be able to go on ahead of your cruise and see all the potential excursions and even pre-register for some of those excursions. If you already know what you want to do, you can do that online through a web portal before you even get on your cruise. And then the magic question: how much does a river cruise cost? That's what everybody wants to know, right? It's a hard question to answer, okay, because it depends on where you're going, how long the cruise is. But I would say, a ballpark number, maybe a starting point, is $4,000 to $5,000 per person for a week-long cruise, somewhere in that ballpark. They do run a lot of specials, so sometimes it's a little bit less. If you're going on a longer cruise, obviously it's going to be a little bit more. So it does fluctuate, but that's maybe a good starting point to think of if you're just looking for a ballpark estimate. Okay, so that's my frequently asked questions. Is there anybody on the line that has any other questions that I did not hit? Feel free to put it in the chat if you've got a question, or unmute yourself and you can ask away. Okay, no questions. All right. Oh, what was your favorite excursion? My favorite excursion was the town called Strasbourg in France. And the most amazing thing about that excursion was that you literally got off the ship and you felt like you were walking into Beauty and the Beast, like this charming, quaint little French town with the timber frame homes and the cobblestone streets and the bakery with the baguettes and just everything that you would think of the quintessential European little village. That was it. And we just wandered around there for hours, going into antique shops, going into bakeries. We ate our way through the town, and I think we probably bought something at just about every bakery that we could. But that was my favorite excursion, but it was hard. It's hard to choose because every day it seemed like was better than the last. Like I thought, okay, it couldn't get any better than today. And then the next day it was better. And then the next day it was better. So, like I said, it was the best vacation that I have been on. And I highly recommend it. I've got another question is, do they allow for gluten-free? And I would say that the answer to that depends on the cruise line themselves. So some of the cruise lines are better about dietary restrictions than others. So get with me and I can definitely points you in the direction of the cruise line is going to have the most, be able to make the most accommodations. I would say yes, though. Most of the cruise lines are going to be able to accommodate most dietary restrictions, gluten-free, nut allergies, you know, shellfish, anything like that. They should be able to handle.
Hey, Kevin, it's
Yes.
Chris Miller.
Hi, Chris.
Um, I had a question, so I figured I'd actually talk on here because I'm not in the car anymore.
Awesome. Thank you.
Um, Thank you for doing this. Full disclosure to everybody on the call. Me and my husband booked a river cruise with Kevin for May this year for our 30th wedding anniversary. And I had a question on the phones. What do we have to do? I've never been to Europe, so I'm not really sure. Do we have to do something with the phone so that they work over there, or that we're not charged ridiculous amount? When you were talking about hooking up to the hotspot, that made me think of that. And then a second question is, do we need foreign currency when you're traveling on the river cruise?
Yeah, great question. So as far as the phone goes, it's going to depend on your carrier. I have AT&T, and AT&T offers a plan where you can do international roaming for $10 a day. And so if and the way they do it is if you use it on that day, they charge you $10. If you don't use it, they don't charge you, and you don't have to
Okay.
specify in advance. And then I think there's a maximum of like maybe $50 a month. So even if you're in Europe for 2 weeks, you don't have to have $140 worth of charges. It's a maximum of $50. So
Okay.
that's how AT&T does it. I'm not sure about Verizon or T-Mobile or other carriers, but you shouldn't have to do anything special as far as you don't need a different SIM card or any kind of special connections or anything like that. Um, so yeah, that
Okay.
that that shouldn't be an issue. As far as currency, I would recommend getting some currency in the case of the Rhine River cruise. All you're going to need is euros. Every place that you're going to be is going to take euros. And so what we did is when we arrived, we just went to an ATM, got out a couple hundred euros, and that was good for the rest of the trip. Really, the only time you're going to need that is if you're going to some local vendors. Sometimes we went to some street markets, we went to some local vendors and things like that where we had to pay in cash. Sometimes if you go to a restaurant, or not even a restaurant, because most restaurants are going to take credit cards, but maybe somebody who's selling street food or something like that, a food truck, you may want some local currency. But I would say 90% of our purchases were done on the credit card. And that's really the best way to do it if you can, if they take credit card, because that's where you're going to get the best exchange rate and the most accurate exchange rate for your purchase.
Okay. Thank you. And everybody, Kevin's awesome. He helped us. We didn't know what the heck we wanted to do. And like within a week, we had it all nailed down. So thank you, Kevin.
Thank you. Thank you. Another question I see on here is how far out should you plan? Um, this is a great question. It's been getting further and further. You'd be surprised how far in advance people are booking for Europe these days. Europe has been really, really, really popular over the last couple of years since COVID. And so I would say if you can book it a year in advance, that's going to give you the most selection, the best chance of finding the cabin that you want, the itinerary exactly the way you want it, give you some flexibility in purchasing your flights and things like that. So I recommend trying to book around a year in advance, but that's not necessarily 100% necessary. Chris, I think you guys booked about what, 6 or 7 months in advance, and it wasn't an issue. It's
I think
it's
it was
def
like, yeah, 6 months in advance. And I was
Yeah,
surprised how far in advance you really should have booked.
yeah, 6 months. I would say the minimum 6 months. But don't feel bad about calling me 18 months before you're want to travel and say, hey, we want to just start thinking about it. That's not a problem. It's really never too early to start thinking about it, to be honest with you. Okay, I think that covers. Okay, Amy says Verizon's plan is similar to AT&T. Awesome. Thank you, Amy. Any other questions? All right. Well, I really, really appreciate everybody's time tonight, spending your time with me here on a Wednesday evening. If you have any questions, my information is here on the screen. I think most of you know how to get a hold of me: email, phone, give me a call, follow my Facebook and Instagram. I post when there are travel deals. I put those on my Facebook and Instagram, so you can maybe keep an eye out for that if you're interested. And give me a call, and I'd love to work with you. Thank you so much, and have a great night.